This is a 1991 Mercedes-Benz 190e. It is an iconic, instantly recognizable car, and this one is mine. Today, I'm trying to answer a simple question. Can you daily it? Let's get into it. When this launched in 1982, it wasn't trying to be a cheap budget commuter. It was Mercedes proving to the world that they could shrink the prestige, the road presence, and the tank-like build quality of the S-Class into a compact executive saloon. And they did just that, earning it the nickname, the Baby Benz. Fast forward to today, and this one is over 3 decades old. And it lives in a world of heated steering wheels, adaptive cruise control, assisted lane keeping, and giant iPad touchscreens. A lot of people think buying an old Mercedes as your daily driver is a romantic dream, or a complete mental breakdown. So can you actually daily a 190e through morning rush hour, hot summers, heavy rain, and long motorway journeys without losing your sanity, breaking down, or completely draining your bank account?
Well, before I answer that, I think you need to understand why this car looks and feels the way it does. And in order to do that, you have to talk about the man behind the design, Bruno Sacco. He was Mercedes-Benz's legendary head of design for over 2 decades, and he held a very strict philosophy. He believed a Mercedes should always look like a Mercedes, timeless, elegant, functional, and instantly recognizable regardless of its size. The 190e was an absolute masterclass in 80s design language. It embodies everything great about that golden era. Clean, sharp, boxy proportions, crisp horizontal lines, and an understated yet commanding presence on the road.
The 190e hit the markets right at the height of 1980s optimism, when being rich was cool. It was an era of pinstripe suits, Wall Street capitalism, and brick cell phones. Driving a brand new Mercedes back then genuinely meant something, and Sacco's sharp, tailored design gave it an air of authority and class that standard family sedans simply couldn't match.
And then there's the legendary engineering. Mercedes famously spent over £600 million, more than $2 billion in today's money, developing the W201 platform. But this was back when engineers ruled the boardrooms at Mercedes-Benz, not accountants aiming to cut pennies off plastic trim.
You feel that uncompromising build quality as soon as you interact with the car. When you close the door, for instance, the sound is so reassuringly mechanical. Then you have the smaller over-engineered details like the dials and the switches on the dashboard, which feel like they belong in some kind of industrial factory or something. And then you've got the mono wiper on the windscreen, which has a complex mechanical linkage, which allows it to extend outwards up into the top corners, enabling the wipers to cover 95% of the windscreen. It is totally over-engineered, but utterly brilliant. Mercedes offered a massive lineup of engines over the 11 years it was in production, and there's a lot more than people realise.
You had standard 4-cylinders ranging from 1.8 to 2.3 litres, or a silky 2.6 litre 6-cylinder if you wanted extra smoothness. If you wanted speed, Cosworth helped build the famous 16-valve homologation specials for DTM racing. And if you wanted sheer reliability, you had the legendary bulletproof diesels, available in both 4 and 5-cylinder setups.
These engines, especially the diesels, are notorious for pushing past 300,000 or 400,000 miles, and sometimes up even beyond 500,000 miles. For context, that's like driving from London to Sydney and back 16 times.
In fact, if you travel across North Africa and the Middle East today, you'll see thousands upon thousands of old 190Es still running as working taxis. They rack up astronomical mileage every single day in 40-degree desert heat on unpaved roads, loaded with passengers and luggage. But 190e can survive 2 decades as a daily taxi cab in sub-Saharan Africa. You can certainly handle your suburban morning commute to the office.
So on to the ride quality. Well, the 190e was the first Mercedes to feature multi-link rear suspension, which means it is more than capable of handling the, let's face it, absolutely shocking road conditions that we have to deal with here in the UK now. I mean, honestly, where did all these potholes actually come from? You combine that with the visibility that you get in here from the large windows and the very thin pillars at the side, and it's actually remarkably easy to navigate a modern city like London. Now, inside the cabin, let's talk about what it's actually like to live with on a daily basis. When you step in here, it is like being transported straight back to the 80s. It is a perfect example of Mercedes ergonomics. It's durable, it is functional, and is actually surprisingly high tech for its time. Depending on the trim, you either got the MB Tech synthetic leather, which you obviously see on a lot of old school Mercedes, which is really, really nice, or this checked material, which basically refuses to actually ever wear out, even after 30 years of use. I mean, there is a couple of marks in the back, but I think that's basically from where someone's been smoking a cigarette. Not good. But you also get this wood trim, which is really, really nice. It kind of gives like an old world luxury feel to An otherwise fairly boxy interior, it must be said. One of my favourite features is the climate control system, although calling it a climate control system might be selling it a little bit hard, because in reality it's more like a dual zone heating system, but does allow the driver and the passenger to have separate temperatures, which is pretty cool. And actually that didn't become available on regular cars for quite a bit of time after this was released, so that's a good feature. Air conditioning was also available as an option, which seems kind of amazing to me considering how old these things are. But you could also get a factory option like electric windows, power sunroof. You could even get heated seats, which this one doesn't have. You also get one mirror, which is powered, which is the one on the left. This one is just a manual adjustment. And then apparently you could also get an ambient air temperature gauge built right into the instrument cluster. When you daily this, there are a few things that you have to get used to. And the first is the ergonomics and tech, or lack thereof, should I say. There's obviously no screen and no Bluetooth, which is not necessarily that much of an issue if you drive this occasionally, but for me, it does become slightly annoying when I get back into my other car and I've got CarPlay and actually air conditioning and all that stuff, the modern comforts. The other thing this thing doesn't have is cup holders, because back in the day apparently humans didn't need liquid. The second is space. This is a compact saloon, but they've really taken compact in the back to the max. The passenger legroom back there is not great, but in the front it's actually totally fine. I do hear some people complaining about the boot lip on the back, that you have to lift your stuff quite high to get it into the boot, but I don't find that to be a problem at all because the boot itself is actually really quite big. The third is safety. And whilst this did feature early safety innovations like crumple zones and optional ABS and optional airbags, you are still at the end of the day driving around in a light 80s vehicle. And I'm not sure how you're going to fare up against one of these extremely heavy, monstrous SUVs that you see about the place these days, like my Range Rover. But what about the financial side of dailying a 35-year-old Mercedes? Well, you can actually save yourself quite a lot of money by dailying a 190e in depreciation and insurance. Unlike a modern car that loses thousands of pounds of its value the moment you drive it off the forecourt, the 190es around now obviously are at the bottom of their depreciation curve and are actually appreciating in value. So that you can remove from the equation. And then on top of that, you've got the insurance costs, which are really low. I mean, I'm only paying about 450 quid a year, but that is in fairly central London. So if you're not in London, it's a lot lower than that. And that brings me on to my next point, which is a bit of a stickler. And that is that, as I said, I live in London, which means that every time I drive this, I have to pay ULEZ, which is £12.50 per day, which really starts to rack up, obviously. And what that means is that I don't actually daily this that much. I mean, sometimes I do, I kind of go through periods. In summer, I do, not when it's too hot, because it actually is unbearable without aircon. But that is a really limiting factor in one's ability to daily one of these. But again, that's only if you live in London, which not everyone does, so that could be irrelevant to most people in the UK. Well, it is irrelevant to most people in the UK because most people don't live in London.
As for reliability and maintenance costs, the golden rule of 190e ownership is simple, and is the same for any classic really, or modern classic. Do not neglect the car. If you buy a cheap knackered example that's sat in the rain for 10 years, you'll spend your weekends fixing small electrical gremlins or aging rubber vacuum leaks. Instead, you should buy a well-serviced car with a good history. Basically, it's best to just keep the thing serviced and you'll be golden.
So what about fuel economy? Well, most people would presume that an old car like this would be an absolute gas guzzler, but you would in fact be wrong, because this is actually, unlike most modern cars, not loaded with tons of tech and sound deadening. And as a result, it's not that heavy. It's about 1,100 or 1,200 kilos. And you can actually get above 30 miles per gallon in this thing, which is not actually that bad. I mean, to be honest, that's actually better than my SVR, my Range Rover SVR, although that is not exactly saying something because they are notoriously bad. And finally, what about buying them? Well, it's actually surprisingly easy to find one online, because between 1982 and 1993, Mercedes built 2 million of these. And of course, as I've said, they were built absolutely brilliantly and incredibly well, so a lot of them have survived. So when you go online, there is always absolutely tons of them. And if you've got a particular spec or colour that you have in mind, you're really not going to have to wait that long for one to actually crop up. And in terms of prices, you can get one for about £2,000, but I really would not recommend it because it will be absolutely cooked and it will just cost you an absolute fortune. They range all the way up to £10,000 for, I guess what you'd say would be like a kind of mint condition, enthusiast level example. But I paid £5,000 for this, and I have to say, I think I got a pretty good deal because it is an extremely good nick. So what's the verdict? Can you daily drive a Mercedes 190e? Yes, absolutely you can. But you need to buy a good example and approach it with the right mindset. If you want to get into a car, turn the key, ignore maintenance for years and treat it like crap, then go buy something else. But if you're willing to put a little bit of time and effort into it and trade in a few modern gadgets for pure driver connection, the 190e offers something no modern commuter can. It gives you character. It turns the daily boring commute into an actual event. Every time you pull up to work, you're driving Bruno Sacco's legendary boxy design. You're experiencing German engineering at its 1980s peak. So it's not merely surviving as a daily, I think it's absolutely thriving. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you were daily a 190e, and I'll see you in the next one. Serious bit of kit.